Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. That was a great way to start. Just Gretchen, like, laugh hiccuping. A+ quality content for you guys. This is our super secret surprise hangout. That's not super secret, but definitely surprise, where we're talking about the last book in the Bibliomancy for Beginners cycle of Own Voices authors. And that's Taylor's pick, which is Being Fishkill by Ruth Lehrer.
Lehrer, I assume.
Lehrer.
Probably not that one.
Yes. Last names. I don't know. This is a book club.
This is a book club. I feel to a degree the Own Voices, we've gone in very different directions with each one, I think.
Yes.
Because we had The Hate You Give and what was the other?
Every Hearted Doorway.
Every Hearted Doorway. Yes, and I chose Being Fishkill not because I knew very much about it, but because it was kind of giving off vibes with like very vague book reads things that are now a little more clear of this very much being a queer novel in several ways, and the author is queer. She lives out in Central Mass with her partner. That's all I know about her. I think this is her first novel. She used to be a poet, and probably still is a poet. I don't think you need to trade in your certificate.
You've moved on to prose. You are no longer allowed at our conventions.
So I am curious, in addition to our feelings about the book, just how we interpret the multiple ways I think this engages with gender and sexuality in a coming-age narrative.
Okay. Before we do that, though, for folks who have not read the book,
yes, I'm
going to give technically what's on the inside flap of the book jacket, and then we'll give our overall reviews, and then we'll do this very interesting talk on gender and sexuality. It will happen, but first...
We don't have to, but it's
an car accident.
Maybe being named for a highway sign off the Taconic State Parkway is a sign itself. Passing through, passing by, Carmel Fishkill was born in the backseat of a moving car, unceremoniously pushed into an unfair world. After 13 years of poverty, neglect, and verbal abuse, Carmel decides to fight back. The first step, a new name. Carmel Fishkill becomes Fishkill Carmel. Fish, cold and scaly, kill, don't mess with me, dangerous. Fishkill's fierce defenses falter upon meeting eccentric and logical optimist Duck Farina. The two girls form an intense bond, and Fishkill enjoys a glorious detour into a world of roasted chicken dinners, home-baked cookies, pink ruffled beds, and a mother-daughter code that speaks of love and forgiveness. When the dream tragically implodes, a fast retreat into anger, grief, and isolation is definitely the easiest, most logical route for someone named Fishkill to take. I think that's it, because the rest is about the author. So,
that's very different from the ARC I have of this.
Oh, that's interesting. Maybe we can talk about that after.
Yours gives away more.
Oh.
I was gonna say whatever I read, and I don't know if it was off Goodreads or what, like that. So, I think this is gonna bleed right into my non-spoilery overall review. Was that I went into this expecting one thing, and whoo boy diggity dog, did I get some other stuff.
Yeah.
This story does not go where you expect it to go. It did not focus on the things that I expected it to focus on. Like every single chapter, I was like, So I don't. So it's hard to say whether or not I enjoyed the novel or not, because I spent the whole thing going, what? Like right up until like the end of the book, where you're just like, what the frickety frack frack is happening?
That being said, it is still like a very normal, not like realist fiction narrative.
Yes, that was going to be my second thing, was that I was expecting it, especially from the names, I think, to be like a little bit like fantastical a la Weeksy Bat. But this is very grounded in reality. It's a very realistic and at times quite heartbreaking story. But like it just, when Taylor was like, this is about maybe lesbian middle schoolers, and then like reading the book, I was like, oh dear. So
Yeah, it's about all
expect
I
more heartbreak for like, but heartbreak for non-queer reasons, which I think is important. This is not a heartbreaking story because they are maybe queer, because that is a trope that this is not at all a part of. This is a very different, your heart hurts for other reasons. But anyways, I'm done.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't think I went into this having many like ideas of what it was going to be. Like I think that maybe clouded my reading of it, in that I was more willing to sort of follow along. I was like agreeing that it was some weird twists and turns that we were going on here, but I was less of an expectant reader and more of just like okay, this is where we're going. All right, sure. That's fine. Cool. And I guess like it was enjoyable. It was like technically well written, but it was one of those books where I came out the other end being like, it was okay. I don't think it's a book that I'm gonna hand to somebody and be like, this one's one you should read. It's not a bad book. It's not one that I'm not gonna suggest. And if somebody gave me like a bunch of buzzwords that applied to this, I might recommend it to somebody. But I don't think that it didn't blow me away, if that makes sense. It's a solid book. It's a book. It's good.
It's a book. There are pages. It has words.
It does what it's supposed to do. There wasn't anything that made me particularly angry or that I felt was like problematic, really. So there was that. Like it was okay. It was an okay book.
All right. Yeah, I picked this off the Horn book free cart after reading like the first 5 or 6 pages, and even like totally agreeing with Gretchen that this is a really heartbreaking book at times. It's also a very funny book, especially in the interactions between the two protagonists. So I had a very different perception of what I was going to be getting as a story between me reading it or me sampling it and me actually reading it after I had selected it. So it was definitely an experience of kind of going through different things. Overall, I did really enjoy it. It is a solid book. It was very well written. It was very compellingly done. I disapprove as a reader, but not like in a critical sense, of some things that happened. And by disapprove, I mean I'm grumpy about them. But that is not actually a critical assessment of the book. I think it did very well, and did so in a surprisingly delicate and maybe not compelling, but
it wasn't afraid to go there in a couple of different senses, which I liked. I agree with Michaela. It was a good book. It didn't blow me away, but it was also a book that like I didn't know in a sense what was going to happen next, because the author was not afraid in a couple of different ways to go there. And that was nice. And it was like a very refreshing, like I don't know the plot of this before I finish it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I will say it was successful in that. It attempted a lot of things, and I think it did succeed at them. And I think that's definitely to Lara's credit as an author.
That's fair. So if you have never joined us before, again, this is a book club, so we're going to be talking about the specific events from this point on. If you don't want to be spoiled, we recommend like bookmarking it, going and reading the book, and then coming back. If you don't care about being spoiled, or if you read it like we did, proud of you. Thank you for reading the book. We're going to talk about it now, so that'll be super fun. If you want to, I feel like I should say this now because people will leave now, but if you want to join us for future book clubs, we do have a Goodreads group. You can look in the description and click on that and see the books that we'll be reading in the future. We always have them picked out a couple months in advance, so if you want to pick and choose, that's fine. Otherwise, subscribe to the YouTube channel and be surprised, just like everybody else, when we pop up with a discussion. Okay, continue. Where do we want to start with our discussion here?
Can I, because we were just talking about things that it like set up. Can I just say that like I am not surprised by twists. Like never. This never happens to me because I'm like, I see you. I see you from a mile away. I see you, and I am not like I just read Warcross by Marie Lu, and I was like, let me explain to you how the next 2 books in the series are going to go. Like I was like, I'm there. I'm ready for this. Warcross is not a bad book, guys. I'm cynical. But, like, I did not expect her mom to be dead. Like, when she's like, oh, yeah, I've totally been living alone. Like, did I just miss something giant? Or, like, was that actually really well hidden? Because, like, I'm not sure at this point. Because, like, when that happened, I was like, you surprised me? What?
It's also one of, like, it's the first of 5 mother twists. All of which are unexpected.
I don't know what, like, I literally, when she was like, yep, my mom's been dead, and I, like, shoved her into a river, I literally put it down, and I was like, I'm never surprised. I'm never surprised. And I think this feeling welling up inside of me is surprise.
So, I thought about that when that happened, and I think that the reason is that the way that Fishkill talks about it is she's focusing less on hiding something and more about being embarrassed about how she lives. Like, the way that she, like, anytime that somebody talks about going home, she's like, oh, no, they're going to see how dirty it is and how weird it is. It's very different. And she's not at all thinking, oh, no, they're going to find out I'm alone. Which has pros and cons, because yes, it was unexpected, but I also was like, you don't seem like it, that aspect of your life doesn't seem to bother you at all, despite the fact that you should be starving and like.
Well, I think it does do a pretty solid job of explaining her summer alone.
I mean, yes, that's fine. And it starts the book with them in school and having been stealing from like other kids at lunch and things like that. But like, I still feel like part of the reason that came so far out of left field is that we were given no sense that she was alone.
Which is okay.
Yeah, because for me, why I didn't catch on that at all was that, like, even when her mom was there, she was alone.
Yeah.
Like, so, like, whether she was describing how she was living with her mom there or describing how she was living without her mom there, the only real issue that I saw was that she didn't have the food stamps and then she didn't have food, which she did a very good job describing about how hungry she was. This book makes me hungry.
It's a very food-centric book.
It is.
For good reason.
Yeah, like, food is a very emotional thing in life and in this book, and I think moving through the story, it's always very vivid, visceral, descriptive, and just like powerful thing.
It's also probably the thing that Fishkill in general is like she seems to be like aware of differences in other people, but the thing that bothers her is the thing with the food of like, I had to live through an entire year where all we had was canned tomato soup, and that's disgusting and I hated it.
Like,
but like,
that's bad.
Yeah, and that's the thing that bothers her is the food. Like, she can live without heat or without electricity or without a phone, whatever. That's fine. That's just life. But living without food, no way, man. That's the worst.
And it's just that our family never cared. And like, even Keely never really seemed to have that same problem. Like, when she comes back into her life, she's just drinking the single vanilla protein shake for every meal. And it's incredible just how well juxtaposed that is with the constant food and variety of Molly Is it
Yeah.
Molly? Molly?
Yep.
Molly's house and like the healing power of macaroni and cheese. I'm not saying that to be like disrespectful to the book, just kind of cheeky about it.
Yeah.
I mean, she's literally being nourished. She's literally been malnourished, and now she's being nourished in metaphorical and non-metaphorical ways.
Yeah.
And like seeing that there are things to actually enjoy and experience that are just like kind of everyday. And she got pretty good with the food cooking there at the end.
She did. She enjoyed the cooking. Do we touched on it. Do we want to talk about Keely's cult?
Yeah.
Because I was intrigued with Keely from the beginning as like a side character who is growing up with perhaps the same amount of abuse that Fishkill did, and then more so because she became an adult and continued to have to stand a very different kind of abuse at the hands of Fishkill's grandfather. And like her, when she gets freedom, she runs straight into essentially an even, I guess, a different kind of control, which is that of like a brainwashed cult type thing.
Which is also how those groups hold on to members.
Yeah.
Like, that is a very... This book was, you know, because Michaela obviously knows I listen to a lot of, like, true crime podcasts or things like that. And anytime they're just breaking down cults, no matter what they are, from Jonestown to Om Shinrikyo, this is how people are brought into and held in these groups. It's just desperation and a lack of anything else and self-esteem, and it's feeling like you will finally have that stability and like value in the world. And I think this was very, like, it very clearly wasn't just tossed in to this story for drama. It was deliberate. It was very empathetic even.
Well, for me, because I was so fixated on the food thing as well, I found it interesting that this is, even though they are like these smoothie things, they are a form of control that is, again, providing food. Like, you know, she was looking for something that would provide for her, provide something other than tomato soup and no abuse. And she found like, join up with us and you'll have this like unlimited supply of smoothies and protein shakes and we'll take care of you and you'll be nourished. And so like, I feel like Keely was looking for the same thing Fishkill was, just like Keely found it in a very, very strange place.
Well, was she looking for the same thing? Because she was just looking for food. Like, she just wanted to be fed. She didn't want anything else from that. She didn't even want a strawberry protein shake from time to time.
Well, I mean, I think the book also shows, though, that, like, Keely has had a very different way of dealing with her trauma than Fishkill has. And the way, like, Keely has not been able to deal with her life. So, I mean, and then Fishkill basically just said, I'm clawing my way up this mountainside with my bare fingernails. And Keely was just like, wee! Like she just kind of not gave up, but she was just like off a ledge somewhere.
Yeah. But then again,
she was a step away from giving up the whole story.
Yeah. And that was part of what made it realistic, was that it is a way that people cope, and it's a way that we can understand and empathize and be like, okay, we understand how you came to be this way. We understand, and we may not understand everything about your life, but we can see what would lead you to this point, and none of it was like far-fetched as a character trait.
Yeah, that was the wildest thing to me, was that even as I was like having things happen that I wasn't expecting to have happened, none of them seemed like author intervention, which I think if we were to lay out like those 5 mom twists that Taylor was talking about, and if we just said them in bullet points, like in if I heard that from the outside, I would go, okay. The author walked in here and was like, and surprise, the mom's alive. And surprise, the mom's going to drive a car into, like, her car. Like, I was just like, no, no, sorry. But, like, I was reading it. I was like, yeah, you know, this is screwed up, but it's believably screwed up.
Yeah, I think the greatest stretch was just the utter incompetence of small town New York. Sorry,
Don't
basically
badmouth our small town cops.
I'm sorry. It's just, you know, Lair's from Central Mass. We're all living in Massachusetts right now. It just seems. I don't know. No, okay. So, small town New York cops who, after Keeley kidnapped Fishkill for a month, like, no one really did anything about it.
And meanwhile, Duck's like, I got you, boo. I used the one obvious thing and found you.
Yeah, and I don't even mean, like, they were bad at finding Fishkill. It's just, like, after she was found and Keeley's, like, still wandering around the town, like...
Nobody was like, arrest you for kidnapping? Because you did still kidnap somebody?
It's just not gonna happen?
No.
No, it isn't. It didn't happen.
Although, speaking of, I think that, like, the relationship at the core of this book, which we haven't talked about yet, so we talked a lot about Fishkill and her mom, is Fishkill and Duck.
Yes.
And I think
kind of the central part of this book.
Yeah, so for me, honestly, the most, like, when it started out, the most magical human to me was Duck. Because she was like, yeah, you want to join my gang? This is cool. Let's be friends. And I was like, nuh-uh. Like, this is, like, the perfect, like, manic pixie dream girl friend.
Yeah. It was a lot.
Then, like, the thing with the soccer girl happens, and I was like...
And Duck finds the new cool friend, and then there's, like, half the book of Duck being kind of half acceptable and half, like, really shitty. I'm like, okay, yeah, this does sound like middle school.
Yeah, which, I mean, like, for whatever reason, a lot of books that I read anyway, like, you know, there are the mean girls, and then there's the clique. And unless it's, like, the central part of the book where, like, the main conflict is her friend has, like, been taken over by the clique gang, like, showing the fact that those friendships are malleable and, like, you can kind of move back and forth and you can make mistakes. And, like, I've never really seen that portrayed as well as it was portrayed in this book as well.
She wasn't like brainwashed against Fishkill. She was just separating those parts of her life.
Yeah.
And I think that that's more realistic than the I'm now one of them and I'm going to completely write off my friends that I had before. And you could see in the one scene where she's there and, like, makes fun of Fishkill, and Fishkill turns and asks Duck if they're walking home together or something like that. And she looks embarrassed and, like, is trying to, like, stumble her way out of the hole that she's found herself in, that she's not, she's part of bystander syndrome of, like, I'm not going to rock the boat because I enjoy the positive aspects of this relationship. And like, that a lot of that happens in real social circles of, like, trying to weigh what's better and what's worse. Do I want to be friends with this person that I look up to? Because she clearly, like, really looks up to this person. Or do I want to, you know, do something else? And navigating that is a very big part of the coming of age narrative, especially for girls, in the way that they talk of, like, boys punch each other, but girls are much more, like, nuanced psychosocial relationships.
Girls politically assassinate each other?
Yeah. Basically. Literally in this book. Through essay writing contests?
We'll get to that. I do want to talk about that. But no, I did want to say that, especially around the first third, like the mark of that, I was where Gretchen was, I think, of, like, okay, this child Duck is a little too much romantic pixie. Like, she's the smart and wild and eccentric and, like,
perfect friend.
She's the perfect friend. Exactly. And seeing that vulnerability and insecurity through her character changing in the story, even when she does get back, like, she doesn't ever stop having those traits of, like, the perfect friend that we described. It really humanized and kind of brought me back into the book, seeing that arc.
Well, and also I think that's not surprising in when you first have this friend, especially for Fishkill, who's been so friendless. Like, it made sense that she would kind of have Duck Duck on a pedestal, right? And like everything Duck Duck did would be the coolest thing ever, because here was this person who was fun, and but more than that, wanted to hang out with Fishkill and wanted to like be friends with Fishkill. And so, like, I think that that's normal when you have like a new friend that you're really excited about, and you're just like, oh my god, they're the coolest person ever, and then you hang out with them more, and you're like, there's like the person behind.
There's the negative traits. I see them now.
And then they still decide to be friends, and then the book rips your heart in half and stomps on it, but that's fine.
Yeah, you know. And then you spend 80 pages trying not to cry while on the tea.
Oh, yeah? That's fair. Do we want to talk about Molly, since we've talked about her daughter and the counterpoint of Keeley?
Let's get the face, the poster child of gay in this novel.
The poster child of gay?
Yeah.
That's how you're doing it?
She's really the font from which all, like, gay discourse in this novel.
I mean, yes.
From.
Yes, but...
But that didn't come up until so much later.
Yeah, so, like, it wasn't... The thing that I appreciated, it wasn't that obvious, and it only came up when it felt natural to come up, and in a way where, like, Duck Duck said something along the lines of, like, oh, my mom and this woman got divorced, kind of.
So, guys, I wasn't hating on this character or any part of the writing in this. I was just... Again, this is our own voices discussion.
Yeah, no.
We need to talk about... Over-discuss.
Yes.
Anything.
Well, yes. And that was, like what Michaela said, it was nice. It was just like, Molly was just a person. Like, she was just Duck Duck's mom. For a really, really long, and a good mom, and a great mom. Heck, I could take Molly as mom. Let's go. I would also, never be hungry again.
Single mother was like a very interesting stance to take, and this is a contemporary book, and exploring the different ways that kind of family was constructed over time was very interesting.
I mean, divorced gay parents of like of Duck Duck who. I mean that.
Well, Molly was a single mother until Duck Duck was 8.
Yeah.
Completely by choice. And I thought that was very interesting because it was never framed in any way as an inadequate family model.
Yeah. And it also allowed for her to basically take in Fishkill, because she went through other options before doing in vitro insemination and having a child that's her own child. She was thinking of fostering. She, it meant that it allowed for that aspect, because that is something that I was worried about. I was like, you can't just stay with a person because they're friends and saying, oh no, she took the classes and was registered to be a foster mother at one point, and that was like a major part. And I went, thank you for giving like an in fiction, very valid, like able to be found reason for this to make sense and to work.
But also like showing that because she was a lesbian single mother made her more adequate to take Duck Duck in, or to take Fishkill in, to then like being like a thing where they were like, you know what I mean? Because like so often I think the trope in fiction is that like, oh, you can't possibly, even just like the single mom trope, if it's like, you can't take this child in, you're not prepared. And then like, no, you're also a lesbian, you'll corrupt her, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, I'm a registered foster mother. And they're like, for this reason, you may raise this child. You are perfectly prepared for this.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, cool.
It it worked. It worked, and it was done.
Mm-hmm.
It was handled well.
And throughout the book, like, we can also discuss in some way, like, the last 80 or so pages that I mentioned, in which it's a very powerful section for Molly.
Yeah.
Like, obviously for Fishkill, but I think in many ways it is about her as a mother that really defines that whole section, and losing this child that was so vital to her in so many ways, and then navigating Fishkill's place in that, I think, was, when I was doing my spoiler free, that's really what I was thinking of when I was saying this was so deftly and compassionately done. It was really, really impressive.
Yeah, that last, like I think you said in the beginning too, I did not expect really that last section to exist. And I thought it would exist in a different capacity, because up until then, again, Molly has really been the model mom. Mm-hmm. And so, like, you know, in another book, this is, you know, Fishkill blaming herself and going into the spiral, Molly pulling her out and being like, we have to be a family together. And like, no, Molly absolutely collapses, which is far more like realistic than being like, oh, are all in this together. Hi, thanks, High School Musical.
We got it.
But like, and for me, like, that, you're right, that was really what broke my heart, was just like how far Molly collapses and Fishkill's going, oh my god, like, this is totally my fault, and that, like, it just, like, all does kind of collapse in on itself a little bit. Mm-hmm. And from that, they, like, get better together. Like, they, you know, I don't know how to explaining this well, but like that last 80 pages that I was initially like, why is this here? And then I was like, ow, this thing in my chest.
Absolutely, because like you said, not only was it the realistic thing, it's also in many ways what we don't see in a lot of juvenile fiction. I don't know. The YA, as we've discussed many times, has a lot of problems with how it approaches death, especially the death of teenagers or, you know, adolescents in general, in a way that very much romanticizes a lot of the aspects of it in, you know, in broad sweeping ways. You know, sort of reading can be very harmful or just very not good. And this is a complicated and unflinching look at that loss in a way that I am, yes, very, very disgruntled that Duck Duck died in this novel. But I think, like, it couldn't really have been handled any better. And so, even if I'm still not going to be saying this is my, you know, favorite book of the year or anything, I think this is definitely something I'm going to be hanging on to for that reason, and that it does so significantly stand out.
I think I had some slight issues with the, like, replacement thing of, like, I don't know, I guess I was just thinking about it a lot, and then it happened in this book where there's been a couple of stories where, like, the happy family takes in this child, and then one child is killed or sacrificed or something, and there's this other new child that then sort of becomes a pseudo version of that one, wherein, like, there needs to be, like, this switch of the children, and like the original child was just training for this new child, or like something like that. I think it happened in there was a movie that came out last year that was like the Book of Peter, I think, or something like that, about a story about a kid that gets brain cancer, and the mom at the end ends up adopting the neighbor girl who was being abused or something. Like this happens in other stories.
I recognize the trope you're discussing.
right?
I think for me, yeah, and I definitely thought about that as it was happening. I was like, this is going to be weird. But I think, what happened was the fact that, like I said, Molly did collapse. Like, just having Fishkill there was not a fix-all. She wasn't like, okay, now all this mothering energy I spent. She really did lose Duck Duck.
Yeah.
And that loss was visceral to her. And I didn't get the sense that having Fishkill there fixed it at all. Which was, again, as Taylor said, was definitely done. But as well, I think they have that conversation where Fishkill's like, well, how could you not want me to leave? Because, like, I caused this pain. How could you still want me around? And she has that realization that, like, they are really the only two people that have this, like, intimate knowledge of Duck Duck the person. And so having Fishkill there is helping to keep Duck Duck's memory alive in a better way. And again, that's a conversation that I cannot really recall seeing again and resulting around death in that way. So you know what I mean? It wasn't like we'll recreate a family together. It was, you know, the two of us together are two people who are the only people who can remember this loss in this way. Which was to me a very different way to look at it than I've lost a child, but I've gained a child kind of a thing.
Equal exchange.
Yeah.
When I was reading it, I was actually, you know, likewise, I was very aware of that sort of trope, and I was kind of maybe not skeptical.
But like,
I wasn't sure how it was going to go. And I was actually reading it again on the tea, trying not to cry, from basically the standpoint of Fishkill as it was developing, and I think that's very much like a component of the writing that I was so thoroughly like in the, well, how can you stay in that? Like, how do you just like pretend that didn't happen? And seeing that really not developed, but worked out within the narrative was, in a very bizarre way, a catharsis for me, having just experienced that moment in the text. So, it was weird, but for me at least, successful in that sense.
Yeah.
I think there was like when that decision was made to like kill Duck Duck and have Fishkill come into the family. Like,
when the decision was made, the council passed down the command.
When Ruth Lair was like, "This is my plot," like we're automatically going to be skeptical, I think, and it's like how you choose to handle that after you've done it.
Yeah.
That for me, and again, like we've said, like I don't think this is the best book ever written, but like the way that it is written is very well done.
No.
And I think the fact that we need to qualify that anytime we're praising it, like, well, it's not the best book ever, but very good in this thing. I think that also just means it's a pretty good book.
Yeah. And like that's what I said when I was doing my overall review.
Yeah.
I was like, everything that it does well. It succeeds in it. There was nothing that I was like, this wasn't worth it. There was nothing that I felt like could have been taken out, I guess. Like,
but I'd be happier if Duck Duck hadn't died. I'm holding that last star on Goodreads hostage.
This book had something to say, though, and it had something to say from day one. And I don't think that if the feelings and what it was trying to say could have been said if Duck Duck had walked out of the novel.
No, we know. I think.
I also like. I was just thinking about this. It's just fascinating to me when we talk about these books, like how much I recognize in them that I liked more than I thought I did, or how much I disliked more than I thought I did. Because that's not with this book, but it's definitely happened when we start talking about it. And all of a sudden, I realize that I have like this pent up anger I didn't know I had after reading it, and then we start talking, and I'm like, ah!
That is the beauty of book club.
I'm like, I don't know. I'm just like, well, as we're talking about this book, I'm like, I'm respecting it a lot more as we're talking about it.
I definitely feel like I needed to walk away from it for a bit to really digest certain parts.
Yeah. I like also sidestep. I like how different socioeconomic things were handled in this as well, because it, especially from the point of view of bullying, because that's something that like I had a very intimate knowledge of in my town growing up. There was a very huge diaspora between the popular kids, which were undoubtedly the rich kids, and the unpopular kids, which were undoubtedly the poor kids. And I mean, there were some rich kids who were unpopular as well, but like it's still something that's very real and very like recognizable in this book of like there's a divide here, and part of it has to do with money and the way that they do that naturally. Those kids do, they talk about it and they know about it, and it's part of it, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, this had a big, and I think you mentioned it, was like just the detail of like Molly having been a foster mom and therefore she could take Fishkill in. There was a very sincere technical knowledge about this book about things like socioeconomics and what it means actually to be on food stamps and how like food stamps work, because like usually it's like, oh, I'm poor, but like they're poorer than like the rich popular kids, but they're not poor.
Yeah.
And this book had a very, I think it's part of what made it believable in a lot of senses as well. It was just like very technically knowledgeable, and but also just like made a point to talk about these things, which we don't talk about. Again, unless the point of the novel is that this is a novel about poor people on food stamps.
Yeah.
Which I think goes to a lot of things about this book. It's like, it's a book that involves like queer and lesbian like discovery and identities, but it's not about that. It's a book about socioeconomics, but it's not about that.
Yeah.
And like how deftly it handled all of those threads was also just like really, really nice.
She did her research and was like, well, if this is an aspect of my character, what is the reality of that? And let me make that reality real in the novel as well. Sort of to that bent. Do we want to talk about Worm, who is my favorite character?
Yeah.
So I liked Worm, even though he was a big bully.
He was good. He was good.
He was a very angry boy, but he is a sweet boy.
I have to be right back. Hang on.
Okay.
I mean,
continue to speak.
He really stopped being an angry boy very early in the novel and just kind of dropped out of it for a while.
Yeah.
And then reappeared, and he's like trying to use his words.
I know, and
he has
the
a
way
really
that
nice dad.
The way that was described was also really good. Of her spilling milk on him and him looking like he wants to punch her, and her being like, "What's wrong with your face?" And him being like, "I'm trying very hard not to punch you right now." And I was like, "Oh no, sweet boy."
I think that was like this wonderful moment of like neither of them realized it, but bonding in that moment. She's like, well, can you yell at me a bit? Like, yeah, I can do that. Because it is like such a great moment where they're like, I mean, there's a certain level where these things don't really matter.
Yeah.
And we're just kind of two people trying to survive at the fringes of school.
Yeah. And it also let Fishkill in onto what was going on in his life, because he was so extraneous for that time, because more than likely not, he was doing a good job of not being a bully, because he had a talk with his dad or whatever it was, and
because he got like the shit beaten out of him.
Yeah, and like that was important. Like,
and then the next time we saw him, like go on that trip with his dad, he's not in any way got this animosity for Fishkill or like this distrust. He's just a really open, friendly person. And it's interesting how, you know, we see, I guess, his character develop. Like a lot of Fishkill's problems extended from, you know, being constantly starving, having no safety at home, and like no emotional support in any way. And Norm, in a very different way, having these same kind of like acting out problems, but Both of them working on their shit. I don't know. I don't have a greater point here. It's just that it's interesting how characters are developed in this.
Yeah,
In
and
very realistic ways.
even from the very beginning, Fishkill doesn't paint him as like the regular sort of bully. Like he's very clearly meant to be the bully that beats up on kids, but she's always like, yeah, I would probably beat up on kids too if I was like him. Like I was
If I sucked as much as Worm, then
no, I know. She's like, I get it, dude. Like I empathize with you. And that was like part of it. And I appreciated that a lot. I appreciated that he wasn't just the bully. Like even somebody as young as Fishkill understood why he was being a bully. And then she didn't see him changing because it wasn't affecting her. And when she tried to incite him to be a bully again and he wasn't going to do it, she had to go, oh, he's a person. Oh, that's right. He's a person. Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Like, I really appreciated his character arc, even though most of it was off screen, because it felt like he had enough time to do that. Even.
It did feel authentic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do want to bring up the EpiPen scene, but I think that requires us to talk about the essay contest first.
Yeah.
Oh my god, the essay contest.
With Darsa, Queen Bee of the school, if you will. Who, and this was wonderful, Duck Duck's plan to get back at her, because not only does it actually put a little more thought into what it actually like means to be a bully in a school, like it actually kind of recognizes something rather than like projecting your own memory or your own adulthood onto high schoolers like Mean Girls did or something. And it was just such an original and wonderful new thing to experience in a book. Rather
than the revenge being, let's make her fat because the only thing we can take away from her is her body. It was, we're going to take away her reputation because
by giving her a really good one. We're going to show emotional vulnerability for her that is not actually there.
It was like this perfect, like you're saying, like every single time this happens, like the middle school, like takedown, like really the revenge plot, really. And this one was just like, wow, we got you. We got through the power of the written word to give her like this, to change, not to tear down her reputation, but to change her reputation into something she couldn't stand on and do what she was doing. It was like this so well thought out, just like beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah, so it is a understanding of that power and a very different philosophy on just, I suppose, how to put it, femaleness and like the kind of powers and humiliations associated with them.
Yeah, because like so often, like your revenge is just an equal humiliation, which really, in the end of it, it just makes you the same.
It's like bad.
It's bad, and it makes you the same kind of a person, even though you think that what you're like, well, we did it for the right reasons. We did to stand up for the little guy. No, you still did it.
Yeah.
And so this was like, it allowed them to retain the fact that like they were smarter and better people who just like really didn't want to be bullied anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they took away her abusive power, yet nothing that's actually harmful. They didn't do anything that was actually harmful to this girl in a lot of ways. To a degree, yes.
But they just took away her fangs. Like, you know, but they didn't stomp on her. They just said, "Aha, these weapons you've been using? No."
And it's also that it isn't that her father actually left the family and they were humiliating her for being from a broken home. It's like, oh no, they just got a divorce for whatever reason, and we're making up a reason. That's like, you know.
Yeah.
She got over it.
Yeah. It was appreciated. So what did you want to say about the EpiPen scene?
That it was just the funniest thing I've read in a very long time, where when being harassed, Fishkill just kind of suddenly throws her milk at Darsa. Darsa says, "I'm allergic to milk, you bitch," and pulls out her EpiPen, and instead of hitting herself with the EpiPen, goes at Fishkill like with a knife.
Wait, oh, you're gonna kill me with that epinephrine. Oh no.
So wonderfully unexpected and successful on multiple layers that
Okay, so the hilarious thing is that, like, for whatever reason, right before I had read that part of, I may be forgetting this, but, like, you know that meme of, like, the guy in the supermarket who, like, throws the 2 things of milk down and they shatter and he slips on it? Like,
okay,
for whatever reason, that was what I brought up when it happened.
Just an explosion of milk.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just, like, it was just, like, so comically ridiculous. And I think in another context, I would have been like, this is not what would happen. Like, you have to know how allergies work.
Yeah.
But I was like, nope, I'm riding this wave of milk. I'm on it. Let's go.
Like, clearly, she was not that allergic to milk, and also it got on her chest and not in her mouth. So...
But she still shouts, "I'm allergic to milk. You've killed me. I'm gonna kill you."
Thank you for giving the complete quote, because I had forgotten.
Oh my god.
You've killed me. Milk stain. Because she threw a carton of milk. Not much milk comes out of that.
No.
Oh dear.
It was good. It was all good. It was a good time. And that does speak to the like, there's a level of humor to it, but there's also a level of like, not to the point of it feeling like it was just witty writing. Like, it does feel like somebody would do that at the same time, in the way that looking back on something is funny. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of what it felt like. So I appreciate that there's the humor in it there, but it's also, like, not shoehorned in as a tension breaker. It's
no
part of it.
Because Darsa is also at her most emotionally frayed at this point, having just been lauded in front of the entire school.
Lauded as a sweet, pretty princess.
Who's gonna head the anti-bullying committee department thing.
Since we have like 15-ish minutes left, do we want to do kind of like an Own Voices wrap-up moment here?
I do think we should probably talk about the queer part for Fishkill, I think.
Okay, we'll start there. Take it away.
Well, because I do agree we should do a wrap-up in general, but I feel like we should actually talk about the Own Voices component of this book.
That's fine.
It's a coming-of-age novel, and it's a queer one. So, just because I do think there are a lot of components in there, because Fishkill, 1, is younger than she seems at first. Because it takes a while for this novel to actually tell us her age, and she doesn't turn 13 till halfway through or anything. So she has definitely these tomboyish traits that we see. She also takes on a name that's not only kind of outside of gendered norms, but very, strong, rough, as she discussed. It's Fishkill. And I think that was interesting. And also her kind of first feeling out her sexuality in this novel was interesting, but how at the end, not only does she not choose to take on a different name, like a more normal or more feminine name, like none of those tomboy traits have been tempered. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very running counter to the trend where once you hit puberty in a novel, in a lot of like traditional children's lit. Like we think the classics of Anne of Green Gables or Little House in the Big Woods onward. As the girls get older, their precocious traits are tempered and taken away. And I'm thinking specifically right now of female masculinity. Judith or Jack Halberstam is the critical article I was reading the other day that I'm kind of thinking of the tomboy in. But I think it is very interesting as a queer novel because she resists all of those traditional, successful coming of age elements.
Well, and also this coming of age novel is not her at the end going, "Oh, Duck Duck, I now realize I loved you so."
Yeah.
Like she did love Duck Duck, but not like in a like I want to kiss your face way. It was like
it was.
It was, but that's not what it was about. You know, and again, it's not like at the end, like I said, like in a less deftly handled queer coming of age novel, at the end she would have been like, "Oh, and now I realize that like I was a lesbian all along." It's not. That's not the realization that she comes to. And I particularly liked her discussion of her trying to figure out whether or not she thinks lesbianism is bad, particularly in terms of Molly, and when she finds out that Molly was married to a woman, and she's just like, well, my grandfather always said that being a lesbian was like not, there was like gross and, you know, not, however, like the very disgusting terms her grandfather uses to discuss how awful lesbians are. And then she goes through another list of things that her grandfather also described in the same way. And she's like, no, but I decided I like all of those things. So clearly if my grandfather thought that it was wrong, then it must be right. And that's her logic. She's just like, done.
Yeah.
Case closed. I've moved on.
And she really does stop thinking about it until Keeley comes back in and starts like repeating all of the grandfather's derogatory, you know, like language and ideas, and Fishkill's being like, what the fuck?
Like, that's his words. You're gonna be like him. Don't do it.
I mean, in a way, I think that this novel sidestepped a lot of issues by having it come from the grandfather's mouth, because he was so obviously the villain that, like, that, but also, like, it did make the decision to say, like, they're just lesbians, guys.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
He's just, there's a girl, there's a girl, there's a kid, there's a lesbian, is a, you know... They're just like, it's just all people, guys.
Yeah. So the way that the romance between Fishkill and Duck Duck was handled here felt a lot like a middle grade book of like they're trying kissing for the first time. And in the like way that I'm like, I love kids books because the peak of the sexual tensions when they hold hands. Like that's sort of how it feels like in this. But that's also
there was some grabbing.
I mean,
it wasn't just like, oh, this delicate children's kiss.
No, it was more. There was a sexuality involved in it. I'm distracted by what's happening on Gretchen's screen. What is happening,
Sorry,
Fred?
I'm about to die with my laptop here.
Oh, okay. Don't die, Fred.
No,
but
it was.
There was an innocence in it too, in that they like didn't know what they were doing.
It was very much the first steps of that, and it wasn't really resolved for multiple reasons.
Yeah,
like as Gretchen says, this doesn't end with the lesbian realization.
No,
but it also doesn't end in a way that invalidates that.
Yeah, and there's I should probably look up some articles on it, but there's in a lot of women's lit, like chick lit type books where there are a lot of female friendships, there's an element of sexuality to them that women in general, it isn't that they appear how do I say this? It's not that they outwardly are lesbians, but there's an element of like appreciating each other's body and and more of that in female friendships than there is in other things. So it's a thing that shows up a lot, and I notice it.
Okay.
Where like some things that we would label as sexual tension in a female male sort of thing. Gretchen's gone. Bye.
She'll be back.
Okay.
Keep telling me.
Where was I? I got distracted.
You wouldn't see this in female male.
You wouldn't see it in female male, or even in male. It would be labeled as sexual tension, where in in female relationships, it's sort of more accepted. So even this sort of like kissing thing, like there's an element of just friendship to that.
Well, we're starting to see, we're not starting to see. There's definitely that effort to reclaim that in male relationships, in the homosocial, and trying to say, okay, what if this is friendship? What if this is actually just coded homosexual desire, or less coded homosexual desire? Because
blatant homosexual
desire.
Just
like, it's not just saying, oh, Nick Carraway and Gatsby was totally a closet homosexual. It's like, no, like literally we can see. We can see these lifelong buds of commitment are a little bit gay.
They're a little bit gay.
I'm kind of undermining your point here, I think, but it's also like a completely different point that I'm making, so I'm just gonna step away from that.
That's part of why I was saying was that it means that you could read this as it being a completely platonic friendship of them just trying out things for the first time, or you could read it as them wondering whether or not they like girls because they live in a world where that's okay. Because,
it's normalizing.
Yeah. And
it's like whichever way that behavior is, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's just like they may decide they like girls. They may decide that they don't like girls. One of them may like girls. One of them may not. Like
Fishkill definitely likes girls. We can't really say with Duck Duck, but I'm saying it's pretty strong. It was a pretty compelling collection of evidence.
It isn't saying that she only likes girls. Maybe she also likes boys.
Which is why I'm calling
there's
this
no men in this novel. Like outside of like Worm. There's
Worm. There's Worm and Worm's dad.
But there's no dude.
Which is
also,
very
I would like to mention
male representation. Like, especially Worm's development that Michaela and I were discussing when you were absent. Gretchen was just Worm learning to have much more healthy outlets for like bad aggression and like violent tendencies, and like learning to be a much happier, more something else adjectives.
No, I agree. So, but I'm just saying that like it's not like, I mean, again, because that's not what this novel was about. This novel was not about do I like boys or do I like girls. It was about other things. But I'm saying that like this novel leaves it open. Like it leaves her path to exploration open in whichever way that she wants to go, which I think is much more affirming for someone in that stage of their development. Because yes, there are people who know at the age of 13, like, or younger, that they know who they're attracted to and who they aren't. But for a lot of people, having the freedom to choose is just what you need to hear that you have. That you don't have to be ascribed something at a young age and be like, well, you're done. You've circled a bubble, and now you have chosen. The council has spoken. Like
we've concluded from your test results that you're gay.
Here's your pin, your membership pin. Welcome to the club.
Now here's the exact 6 different types of gays you represent in all of these 6 different categories, which we have decided for gayness. Yeah, that's not how it works, guys. Don't know if anyone knows this. It's not how it works.
One of those INF gays, right?
Oh, can I? Side note: there was a scene where Duck Duck was saying that the popular girls were acting like she has cooties because her mom was gay, and I was like, that happened to me. It happened to me. It's real, validated. For folks who don't know, I have gay dads, so like that is that was an example of the female bullying that I was like, that happens. They do that. They didn't burn my socks in a sink, but like still. Validated. Anyway, do we want to talk about just in general the own voices stories and like I think that all three of them, all of us had about the same opinion on it. We enjoyed them all, I think.
Yeah, this was a good round.
Yeah, we've gotten better, I think, at picking good books everybody likes. Except for when we specifically pick a book because we're like,
which does, like, yeah.
When all three of us like agree in sequence on multiple books, I still am very fascinated with that because it doesn't often happen.
Yeah.
And there's usually like a domino pattern in a circle of like who doesn't like the other person's picks.
Mm-hmm.
With Michaela as a swing vote and me and Taylor more often than not hating
Polarized.
each other.
You never know what I want. I'm wily.
But like I think, and I also think that that's really interesting because all of them were different.
Yeah.
Like, which is not normal for you at all. I picked a realistic YA novel, which is not normal for me at all.
And I picked a realistic YA novel.
Yeah, you picked this wild card of an adventure.
I thought they had funny names.
But so I like that this round got us out of our comfort zone, but also brought us something that was very interesting to read.
Mm-hmm.
And wasn't something of the same. Because I was just talking to somebody about how I was really just trying to read fantasy that was not like that Tolkien or like England set world, and not specifically just because I'm not coming at the angle of like I want to read diverse authors, so that is always what I want to, like, it's something I want to do, but just like these diverse authors are offering something else, and that's something else for me in particular. For fantasy, has like a quantitative thing I can say, this is the something else I'm looking for. But I also think that the novels that we read offered us something else in a different way as well. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does, and I agree that those different, not only the very common way to put it is they have a different way of seeing the world, which is both really cliched, but also not quite there. Like, it's just
a perspective, right?
It's a cheap way. Yeah, there are different visions for stories and settings. And Gretchen, you talking about fantasy that isn't like in this Anglo-centric, literally just from the loins of Tolkien, and just all trying to recreate that single story. In many ways, I was thinking of one I read for class called The Shadow Speaker by Niketi Okorafor.
I just read that last year.
Yeah, which is like an Afrofuturist eco-apocalyptic narrative that was so incredibly different in the things it was trying to
what is a fantasy for someone who's not middle class white American? What is the future, like a science fiction novel for not middle class white American straight, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even for something like Being Fishkill, which is about like northeastern white teenager, which in our own ways we all were to different degrees of association, this is a very different story in what it's doing from what we have seen.
Yeah. Or just allowing for a space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like we've had this, I've been talking about this in class as well. It's just that like a lot of these like people who try to include diversity, include the Black basketball player, include the like super gay theater kid, all of who these people do exist, but like there's a more natural way to fit this diversity into a story that sometimes when you're like super like I'm gonna add diversity, this kind of looks like you pick stock character C and their trait is their diversity. Like they really want you to know that they have a Black character or a gay character. That's really important, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because you want everyone to know you have that, but then you also refuse to either hire or listen to your diversity readers.
Yeah.
Which is a thing that's happening a lot in publishing right now.
Gretchen and I did a whole half-hour in-depth discussion where we talked about diversity in literature, and part of it was this, which we'll link. I'll go back and put it in the eye up above after the live stream turns into VOD. You can find it on our YouTube channel if you really want to hear us talk about that more. And it's something that at least I talk about a lot in general, but I think that we talk about every time we read a book. Somebody talks about wanting different stories, either like different genre, like break the genre tropes, break this, break that, like we want that in our reading. So it's important to talk with your money or with your library card or whatever it is, and if you hear about books being own voices or diverse perspectives, it's a good idea to pick them up. And
that's also why, so after this next cycle that we do, we're doing 3 like free-for-alls. So we're each picking a book that we're just like, we just kind of want to read this. Let's talk about this. After that, we're going for indie publishers. So specifically for smaller presses, because there is, I love Penguin Random House. I love me a good Hatchet, a good whatever. But there is a particular formula and a particular money speaks mentality for bigger publishing houses, and they're not as willing to go out on a ledge for some crazier stories. So we are headed off that ledge for the cycle after the upcoming one, particularly for that purpose, because that is, I think, what we've been committed to basically since the beginning. I think that we had like we've had diverse read cycles basically every season, at least.
It's an important thing to challenge ourselves on.
Yeah. But like, and not specifically because we're like, we want to be in on this like diverse reads movement, but specifically because we 3 are just like, I want to read something different. Yeah. Give me something that's like exciting and weird and a little bit wackadoodle crazy. Yeah. Let's do that.
We look for that in our writing, and we have in our reading.
In our writers, we look for that.
We do.
But we also have a tendency to pick books because we like the covers, or at least I do. So it's important to remind me, maybe more than you, to look for those.
Yeah. Be more aware of the mythos around it.
Yes.
Just again, so if you guys have any recommendations for small publishers that you would like us to look at, that would be awesome. You can leave it in the comments below or tweet at any of us. Or
I literally went through my TBR, like looking for my next pick for that cycle, and they're all big publishers. Like every single book, I got like 40 books deep before I got really, really sad. It was like all big publishers that I was just like.
My problem is going, oh, this is a small publisher, and then looking, and no, they're not. They're actually under the umbrella of one of the big.
It's like, no, this is Candlewick.
This is a subsidiary of a subsidiary of a subsidiary of Penguin. Ah, okay.
Are we not, at the end of the day, all subsidiaries of Penguin?
Of Penguin Random House?
Michaela, do you want to talk about our next book since we're starting over time?
Yeah. We're back to the beginning of the cycle, which is my pick. I'm picking the Beekeepers Apprentice. Hold on, I think I have it. And I'm not gonna get up and grab it.
What was the other bee book we read?
The Secret Life of.
No. It was it was that YA book that I.
But
picked.
it was okay. So it wasn't the Beekeeper's Apprentice.
No.
Okay, I've just been seeing
that was another one.
Oh my god, I can see the cover in my head too.
The Bee-Eyed
was that like
Boy.
It's like that magical realism book of Michaela's that I hated.
Rude. It was
You
my
can't even
favorite
tell
from that
people-
cycle.
Okay, that doesn't matter. Talk about the Beekeepers Apprentice.
Sure. It's a book about a woman who becomes Sherlock Holmes' apprentice. So it's a mystery book.
Okay.
I've heard a lot of people will really enjoy the series. It's the first book in that series, and it's gained some popularity, if not like widely in the community who read mystery. And one of the things is that it does Sherlock Holmes really well. So if you're one of those people who enjoy mystery books, or maybe haven't read a mystery book in a long time, like something that's as cut and dry mystery as this, it might be a good one to just check out and give a try. Yeah, because I'm a big mystery and horror fan. I'd like to see if it's done super well in general. Bone Gap was the other one, by the way.
Oh, Bone Gap.
Check out Bone Gap.
Yeah, that was our other book club. Apologies for
like,
forgetting the title. I was like, it doesn't have B in the title. It
no,
does
but
not.
it had to be on the cover though.
It did, yes, and B's are important to that story, but it's not in the title. So there's that. And again, if you have any small publishers to recommend to us, please do, so that we can look through their catalog and pick books for the cycle that's following this free choice cycle. And if you have any ideas for other sort of constraints that we could put on ourselves in our book picks, we are always willing for like section things. Like we've done all YA books at one point, and diverse books, different books. Any sort of qualifications that you think you could give us, that would be super awesome too.
We're gonna start running out of them.
I mean, maybe
books that start with the letter Q.
We can go back to them.
Yeah. Let's do another one. Yeah, so that's that. We'll see you guys in a month reading The Beekeeper's Apprentice. Or if you don't want to read that one, you can look and see what other books we're reading in the future. Again, go to the Goodreads page. I keep that updated. I also post all of our old videos there, so if you want to watch,
we're reading super mainstream YA after The Beekeeper's Apprentice because we're reading Tamora Pierce's new book.
There you go. See, and Taylor hasn't picked his book yet. I might push him to.
No. I just got a selection from the Book Nook. I'm looking at one called The Girl with the Ghost Machine. That seems kind of fun.
Okay.
But I got a few, so I still need to decide on them.
Okay, just let me know, and I'll update the Goodreads page.
Okay.
And that's it. So we'll see you guys then. Gretchen and I will be back on Wednesday to discuss The Immortalists, which is a mainstream lit fic sci-fi magical realism.
Yeah, I have thoughts, guys. Join us Wednesday.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Bye.